Hi, I'm Danny Gregory, and I am a person who makes things. That's kind of what I do. That's whether it's YouTube videos or books or whatever it is. That's basically what I am. Nowadays, they call that a creator, a creative, but I don't know. I call myself a writer, sometimes an artist, various things. But for many years, in between the years that I make stuff, there's also been many years in which I don't make stuff. Not always years. Sometimes it's weeks, sometimes it's days. But there definitely have been periods when not much was going on. And so Sarah wrote to me and she said, how do you push through when you feel like you've hit a wall creatively? And to that I say, welcome to being a creative person. It is just an essential part of what we do, but it doesn't mean you have to live with it. I think about how many things I've delayed working on because of something that was stopping me. And now we have that term, creative block. And creative block is in a way not a helpful term because what it does is it says, it's like a disease. It's a condition that you have, and so you're just unlucky, I guess, or you're looking for medicine for it. And so I think having that name that we apply to it is actually a problem because ultimately what we need to do is we need to try and understand what is actually going on with us. And it can be, we can be in such a situation of really a form of depression that we can't even be bothered to stop and analyze ourselves. And I totally understand that. There are times when you feel like you can't be bothered to creatively get out of bed, so how are you going to stop and understand it? But the cure lies in that, but it also lies in other things. So creative block is basically when maybe you can't come up with an idea, or maybe you have an idea, but you can't get going on it. You can't get working on it. Or maybe you're working on an idea, but you can never finish it. It's lying there like the patient on the operating table. You've cracked its chest. It's still sort of alive, but you can't finish the process. And so you're just stuck with it. Or there's something that you've always wanted to do. For some reason, you can't bring yourself to do it. I think at the core of a lot of these problems is perfectionism. I mean, I can't seem to talk about perfectionism enough because, and I'm not talking about necessarily that you want everything you do to be perfect. It's even less than that. It's really about your vision of what you think this thing could be, but your inability to figure out how to get it to be at that place. And you're afraid that if you start doing it, you'll do a bad job. You'll fail. And it could also be that you're burnt out. It could be that you've been doing a lot of this stuff and you're kind of, grinding it out at this point. You're not inspired anymore. You're just showing up and going through the motions. I understand all those things because I've experienced all of them. And I think about making videos for this channel. There are times when I struggle to feel confident enough to give you advice or to explain something to you or even to show you something that I've made for fear of it feeling, I haven't been able to do it well enough. And I can sit down, I was sitting down to work on a video this morning and I suddenly had all these like highfalutin ideas. I should really do this kind of special effect, or I should do this kind of footage I should go out and get, or I should film it in this kind of a way. And I know that when I get into that process, I have disconnected from the real reason that I'm doing something. It's as if I wanted to tell you a story, but before I tell you the story, I need to go off and read 10 storybooks beforehand. And I need to, get an operation on my throat, or I need to, develop a whole new vocabulary. There's all these things that we think we need to do before we can do the thing that we want to do. And I find that there have been times when I've been extremely productive and I'm making lots of things and I have lots of ideas and I'm just jumping on them and doing them and getting them out the door and moving on to the next thing. However, there are also times when I'm just waiting to know whether this thing is good enough or not. And I want to talk a bit about some of the strategies that we can have for overcoming these creative blocks, for overcoming this anxiety that we have, because it is anxiety, and it is a sense of lack of clarity too, that we just aren't able to see what's going on. A lot of that comes from just showing up to the same job, punching the time clock, sitting down, same desk, staring at the same problem, and just being back in that same place again. I just can't get past it. And you struggle with it, but what you need to do is you need to get away from it. You need to get away from your creative problem. Not for good, probably, but at least for a while, so that you can regain your footing, reconnect with who you are and why you wanted to do this thing in the first place. It's okay to sit down and say, why did I want to make this? Really, why did I want to make it? Not what did I want to be by making it? That's often a thing we get to. I want to be a writer. I want to be an artist. I want to be a YouTube creator. Whatever it is we say we want to be. Instead, we have to think in terms of, what is it that I want to do? Because doing is the problem, not being. When you do the things, when you write, when you draw, when you paint, when you make videos, whatever it is, when you're making those things, then you don't have the problem. And sure, your identity might be wrapped up in some of that, but that's a distraction. The fact is that by doing, you make progress. You learn, you take risks, you go to new and different places. So what you have to do is you have to get out of this situation you're finding yourself in, where you're just back to that same place and you can't start doing. A lot of times, honestly, the answer is to just leave the room. Go, work somewhere else. I just remember being in college and trying to write a paper in my room and trying and just not getting anywhere, and then going to the library, to some deep recess of the library, finding some empty corner and immediately knowing how to do it. It's funny, these things that can just change your mood and your creative act just simply by changing the environment. And I think that part of what's going on with your brain is going to the same familiar behavior, the same familiar construct, because you're in a familiar environment. And, that it's almost like getting a new job, doing the same job, same profession you had before, but now you're in a new job in a new place. Suddenly you start to flourish. So think about ways that you can shake it up. If your art is all set up in a particular place, what if you transplant it? What if you get in the car and drive to a coffee shop? What if you sit outside and do it? What if you go on a trip? That's why people go to writers' retreats. That's why people go and rent a cabin somewhere and do something, because just simply having a change of environment, an environment that you've picked because it's specifically about working, can often be helpful to you. So that's one thought. You might also say to yourself, I can't do that. I can't go somewhere else. So maybe what you need to do is get yourself a fresh sketchbook, or maybe you need to open a new document on your computer. Maybe you need to use a slightly different tool to create buy yourself a new pen, or distract yourself by doing something completely differently and then coming back. Maybe push yourself in a new direction by doing something completely different, like, take a life drawing class, or study some artist whose work you've never seen before, and watch a couple of videos about how they make things. Don't go too far. Don't make this into a giant research project. The idea really is, what you want to do is reboot yourself, right? Turn yourself off, turn yourself back on, and having shuffled the deck in the background, just changing those environmental issues could be enough to make it different. Another thing that we often face when we are blocked is the infinite possibilities. I could draw anything. I could write a novel about anything. There's so many possibilities. And a lot of times what's best is to eliminate possibilities by giving yourself a limitation. That's often what I do, is I give myself, it could be a time schedule. I'm recently, my wife said, let's do a course. We're going to launch it on January 1st or something. And I said, okay. And I suddenly realized, wait a minute, I don't even know what I'm doing. And I had to scramble to get something done. But knowing that there was that date was really helpful to me, because I said, okay, I'm gonna get it done by then. And somehow the panic over the date scrambled my circuits and gave me a fresh start. You might say to yourself, I'm just gonna work in a certain size, or I'm gonna create an edition of 10 different prints, or I'm gonna write a cycle of 4 songs that are all about, German Shepherds. Just give yourself some small constraint. Something that says, it isn't anything, I'm just going to limit the size of it. I'm going to write every single day, I'm going to write for 1 hour. Or I'm going to draw on index cards, and I'm not going to do anything else until I've filled a whole stack of 50 index cards with drawings. Give yourself some set of rules. Or I'm going to draw the same thing over and over again. I'm going to draw my shoe, the same shoe that I wore every morning. I'm going to draw that. Those limitations can spark your creativity, because we push against it and we say, I'm in a little box. But when you're in that little box, you start to look around. You start to find out how you can put windows in it, how you can expand it. We are creative people, and creative people work great in solving problems. So you have to define what the problem is. And the problem can't just be, I can't think of anything. Do something random, randomly type in 4 letters into Google, see what the first word is that comes up, and use that as your prompt for making something. You don't have to think it through. You don't have to work out, how is it going to be? Is it going to be any good? Is anybody going to be interested in it? Am I going to be able to sell it? Just do. Get into that making mode. When you're in the making mode, you may change the assignment as you're going, but at least you are moving. Your wheels are turning. You're creating something new. That's an essential thing to take you somewhere, because you can't get anywhere if you're not moving. That's inertia, and it's extremely hard to overcome. But even making something crappy is good, because you start to change things. Within the idea of constraints, I would also say another thought is to develop some kind of a consistent creative routine. That could be another problem that you have, is you say to yourself, well, I don't feel like drawing, and so you don't. Or, well, I should draw maybe this weekend. You're just flabby and unstructured and undisciplined about things. Again, if you say to yourself, you know what, I'm doing this every morning. I'm going to get up. I'm going to set my alarm 30 minutes earlier, and I'm going to draw for 30 minutes. Doesn't matter what it is. I'm just going to do it every day. Or every night, immediately when I've finished dinner and I've done the dishes, I'm going to take 45 minutes. I'm not going to watch a TV show. I'm just going to sit down and I'm going to do this every day. It doesn't have to be every day. It could be every Thursday. It could be every second of the month, whatever it is. But I think the more consistent you are, the more likely you are, again, to break through and to keep moving. And saying to yourself, I'm doing it for this time. It's not that I have to do something great. That's not the criterion. It's that I'm doing it for this time, and I'm giving myself that space to create. And I'm going to use it. Even if I just sit there staring at a piece of paper. Hopefully you don't. But if you say, I'm just sitting here for 45 minutes staring at a piece of paper, then draw a circle. Draw a happy face. Draw 10 happy faces. Write down what you're thinking. Write down how depressed and crappy this whole thing is. At least your pen is moving. Ink is going on the page. And those are the things that start the wheels turning. You've got to do something. You've got to start moving, even if the movement isn't taking you in the direction you thought you had to go, you're still moving. So try and think to yourself, how can I find a space, a temporal space, a chunk of time in which I can focus and do this work? Another thing I want you to think about is reframing your relationships with creativity. A lot of times we get so bogged down into what we think that making stuff is going to say about us. We think, if I could draw, then I could learn to paint, and then I could sell paintings, and I could quit my job, and I could leave my stupid boss, and I could, go off and live some perfect life. Maybe. That's a hard road to follow. I would say instead, think of what your art making really means to you. Not what the rest of your life means to you, but what pleasure can art making give to you? What ways can it release you and unleash you and tap into your authentic self? I think for many years that was my issue. I had a job and I couldn't think of myself as an artist. I couldn't think of myself as a professional writer because I thought of all the baggage that went with that. Oh, if I was going to sit down and write a book, how would I do it? How would I have the time? Do I have to quit my job? Do I have to, get an agent? What, will I make enough money? How much money do artists make? All this stuff. And you're thinking about that rather than thinking about making stuff, doing. Again, all those things, there's no set answer for any of those questions. They all will come about as you work, as you make stuff, as you do stuff. The world will rearrange itself to accommodate you in some way. If you're being authentic and you're working hard at it and you're being disciplined and you're being realistic and you're doing it with joy and pleasure, that's the key thing, is to say, how can I reframe what I think about my creativity? How can I stop saying, I'm an artist, I'm not an artist, I'm a writer, I'm not a writer, I want to be a famous manga artist, but I have never sharpened a pencil. Stop. Think about doing. And doing may, in time, adjust your identity. It may change your scenario, your life. It may. But don't put all that pressure on it, because that's an awful lot. What else would you do that would have all these expectations? It's like saying, I'd like to go jogging, but I should really go and run in the Olympics and set a world record. It's laughable. It's ridiculous. You wouldn't do it. So why do you have to tie your personal creative expression, which is a natural part of who you are as an artist, as a human being, as an animal on this earth who is creative and who makes stuff and who expresses themselves and who sings like the birds do and who has beautiful colors like the fish? Those are things that come naturally to you, but by ladening them with expectations, by saying to yourself, I can never do this, I'll never be good at it. Well, if you don't do anything, you never will be good at it. And so what? Then don't do things you're not good at. Or if you want to get good at it, then do it. That's the only way you make progress, is by starting. So again, when you come back to your block is coming from this dissonance between perhaps your current situation and your expectation. So you say to yourself, oh, I want to write a novel, but I never can think of any ideas. I just never can find the time to do it. And you're just defining yourself as a person who can't and doesn't. Well, that's a block. That's a blockage, but it's your creation. You don't have to see it that way. You can just say, hey, let's write a story. See where it goes. Let me write a character, come up with a character and a scenario. Let's have fun with it. Let's play with it, see where it goes. Maybe you'll write something that's decent, or maybe you'll be inspired to try again and write something different, or maybe you'll just do it and share it with a couple friends, or maybe you'll post some of it on the internet, or maybe you'll go to Amazon and make an ebook out of it, or maybe you'll get an agent. Maybe you'll write a bestseller. Maybe it'll be made into movies and you'll be a bazillionaire. Whatever, that might happen. It's not going to happen unless you start, though. And I believe that you can do what you set out to do, but I think you have to begin by saying, you know what, I got to get to work. Another thing I want you to think about is that your block is, in a way, an opportunity, because you can look at yourself and you can say, why am I blocked? What am I doing that isn't working? What are the thoughts I'm having that are stopping me? What is the behavior that I'm evidencing? And how is that different from my expectation? What is my expectation? All this sort of self-analysis can shift your perspective. And suddenly you see that the road continues around the block and you can continue there. So your block is part of your process of growth as an artist. It's simply the end of a road, but it isn't the end of the road. It's simply a little lane that you went down and got stuck there, but you can back out of it, or you can drive over and get back on the highway. You can do all these things. And this is an opportunity to do some self-analysis and maybe to be a little tough with yourself and say, you know what? I got to stop whining. I've got to stop feeling sorry for myself. I've got to stop stopping myself. And I have to understand how I can do this better. Put a bit of work into that part of it. But I would say a little bit of discipline is helpful, at least it is to me. Setting a deadline, setting some expectations that are reasonable, and getting down to work and playing with what you can do. So I know that you can get past this. I know that you're watching YouTube videos about blocks because you think that there's some magic trick to it. Maybe there are, but here are some of the things that I would think about again. First of all, think about how you can shake things up. Is it a matter of maybe just going and working somewhere different? Is it working on something different, working with different tools? What can you change that will reboot you? Next, what constraints can you give yourself so that you don't have infinite possibilities, but you have a limited set of constraints that force you to be creative, to work within that. You say to yourself, I'm going to write a Western with robots and it's on a subterranean planet. That's a constraint. Give yourself those constraints, see how you can work within them. I'm only going to draw in red pencil for 3 weeks. Great. Whatever it is, give yourself some limitations and see how you respond to that. Next, creative routine. Try and set yourself a time and a space to do stuff and to say, I'm going to work for X amount of time on X number of days. Do that. And then finally, think of yourself differently. Think about your mindset, your perspective. Reframe your thought process. And finally, acknowledge that, having blocks, getting stuck, it's just part of the creative process. All artists go through it. You can get past it. Don't make such a big deal out of it. Stop watching YouTube videos and go to work and just start making anything, even the crappiest thing. That's movement. That is overcoming inertia. That's getting you to where you want to be. Okay? I hope this is helpful. If it is, and you have some other question that you want to ask me, throw it in the comments below, and I'll see if I can make a video about it in the future. And again, thanks very much to Sarah for inspiring this little diatribe. Thank you and have a great day. Bye-bye.